We make decisions every day. Some decisions are obvious and require little effort, while other decisions are complex, and the best choice is not at all clear. Your ability to make effective and timely decisions is a key job skill that you need as a supervisor. We make many decisions every day, so many that you would think we would know how to do it. But the quality of your decision-making is one of the most important factors that will determine whether you are viewed as an effective supervisor or one that is considered ineffective. The quality of your decision-making is a major job performance factor that you are evaluated on by both your boss and your employees. Effective decisions require a well-thought-out rationale that takes into account overall goals, alternatives, and consequences. Ill-considered decisions and poor decision-making techniques may cause more problems later.
Hey, John, I need to ask a favor.
Okay, shoot.
My brother called last night and asked if I could go fishing with him this weekend. I need to leave early Thursday and take off on Friday.
Are you kidding? No way.
People who make snap decisions often want to appear decisive or are just impatient. Often they will make decisions without considering the alternatives or the consequences of a bad decision. In this example, there may have been a valid reason to not allow the time off, but it would have been better to consider the possibilities rather than deny the request out of hand.
Hey, John, the pump on Unit 2 has developed a pretty bad leak around the packing.
Oh?
I talked with maintenance about it. They're all tied up today on the overhaul of the other system. They'll have someone free tomorrow. They asked me to check with you to see if you want to pull someone off to repack it today or if you want to wait till tomorrow.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Procrastinators often try to avoid making decisions, often out of fear of making a wrong decision. Sometimes they play devil's advocate too much and have a hard time making a decision. It's a good idea to gather information and then make a decision based on that information. But delaying decisions too long could cause problems. Supervisors that procrastinate can be viewed as weak, unfocused, or indecisive.
We've been looking at the possibility of replacing the control system on Unit 3 with a new digital system.
I think we can get some significant gains in efficiency if we do that.
Digital? Nah, we don't need that. Analog works just fine. I mean, we've been using the analog system for 15 years. Nobody's ever had a problem with it. No reason to change now.
In this example, the decision was made purely on the basis of what was done in the past. While this kind of decision-making can be a result of an organization's culture, it is often because the person making the decision lacks knowledge or experience, or sometimes they're generally resistant to change, or don't know how to handle diverse opinions. Sometimes the best course may be to continue doing something the way your group has always done it. However, it's a good idea to consider if conditions have changed in a way that would support a decision to try a new way of doing something.
Hey, Kate. I hear that Bill and his cronies decided to replace the control system on this unit with some new computerized stuff. Is that true?
That's the scuttlebutt.
Doggone it. Why don't they ask one of us about it?
In this example, a decision that could affect a large number of people in the operation was made by one individual or a small group. It is important that decisions that have a wide impact on an organization have wide acceptance and support among those who are affected by the decision. One way to get people to support a decision is to give them a chance to participate in the decision-making process. There are many common examples of poor decision-making techniques. Similar decisions might have to be handled differently under different circumstances. Sometimes it may be necessary to make decisions quickly, while in other situations it may be best to move slowly and consider the options. The key is to use good judgment and apply the concepts that are taught in other parts of this program. If you can do that, it'll strengthen your ability to be an effective decision maker. One way to categorize decisions is whether the decision is low consequence or high consequence. It is important to correctly judge which type of decision needs to be made because they are handled in different ways and the consequences are different. When determining whether a decision is low consequence or high consequence, you should consider the type and size of the organization. How many people will be involved in implementing the decision or be affected by the decision, and the impact the decision will have on things like productivity, safety, and environmental issues. The terms high and low are relative, and each situation must be defined by how it fits into the specific organization. In general, low consequence decisions do not affect the organization as a whole and do not require acceptance by a large number of people. Low consequence decisions are generally small decisions that can be made quickly and forgotten. Most of the decisions supervisors make every day are low consequence decisions. But even with low consequence decisions, good judgment is required. Low consequence decisions can be divided into two broad types: operations-oriented and people-oriented. Low consequence operational decisions require an efficient response more than a lengthy decision-making process. A typical example might be to decide whether to pull someone off one job to repack a pump or to wait until someone is available. Review the facts quickly but thoroughly. Come up with a first answer. Compare the first answer with one or two other possibilities and decide which is the best decision. Trust your judgment and don't dwell on the decision. Low-consequence, people-oriented decisions are often important to the people involved, even if they are low consequence in the context of the whole organization. A typical low-consequence decision might be whether to approve a request by a worker for a scheduling change. For this type of decision, some things to consider are: is there a written policy that can be applied to the situation? What effect will the decision have on relationships with others in the organization? Will granting the request endanger others' health or safety? Will granting the request adversely affect the plant's output? Although this type of decision is a low-consequence decision, there could be some significant negative consequences if these factors are not considered. High-consequence decisions are generally more complex. High-consequence decisions may involve large amounts of money or other resources, or they may have a greater impact on such things as productivity, safety, and environmental issues. High-consequence decisions are likely to require careful consideration of a larger variety of factors than low-consequence decisions, and they often require greater acceptance and support throughout the organization. High-consequence decisions can also be divided into two broad types. We'll call them expert-oriented decisions and broad-spectrum decisions. Expert-oriented decisions are most often technical decisions that do not generate much controversy among others in the operation. Although such decisions may not require wide acceptance and support, they can be high-consequence decisions when implementing the decision involves a large amount of money or other resources. If the decision will have a wide effect on people and the organization, such as a major restructuring of job responsibilities or changing the structure of the organization, then the nature of the decision changes. This type of decision is called a broad-spectrum decision. Making the decision of whether to overhaul a control system or replace the control system might be decided primarily on technical issues. But what if another option were introduced that would change the whole way the work was done, such as replacing it with a system using more advanced technology? In this situation, the decision would probably still require technical expertise, but the nature of the decision would change to a broad-spectrum decision. Making high-consequence decisions involves defining the desired outcomes and other conditions, gathering the relevant facts, identifying alternative choices, deciding on the best choice, and developing an effective implementation plan. There are several questions that must be answered before the decision-making process starts. The first question is, what must be decided? A decision might be whether it is more cost-effective to overhaul a control system or buy new equipment of the same type. Later, it might be determined that another option is to purchase, at a somewhat higher cost, newer and more advanced equipment that would change the whole way the work was done. So the real issue to be decided would change to whether it's more cost-effective to keep the same workflow design or to redesign the workflow to take advantage of more advanced equipment. Making sure that the real issue is defined will avoid wasting time and resources on considering the wrong decision. The next question is who will make the decision. That will depend on several factors, including whether the decision is high consequence or low consequence, the amount of expertise or knowledge of the decision area that is required, and the degree of acceptance required to effectively implement the decision. There are several possibilities. One is the supervisor alone. This is a natural choice, assuming that the decision affects the supervisor's area of responsibility and the supervisor has the expertise. Another possibility is a person selected by the supervisor. Supervisors should not assume that they need to make every decision alone. Even though a supervisor is ultimately responsible for decisions that affect his or her operation, sometimes it is more effective to select someone to make the decision. This can be the best choice on a low-consequence decision if the person has more direct knowledge of the decision area than the supervisor, and when it is a technical decision that will not generate much controversy among others in the operation. Sometimes the decision is made by the supervisor in consultation with others. This is often the best choice when a high-consequence, expert-oriented decision is needed, and the decision will have minimal impact on other staff members. In some cases, the decision is made by a team or other group that is representative of those in the organization who will be affected by the decision. This is often the best approach with high-consequence, broad-spectrum decisions that need wide acceptance and support from the people who will implement the decision, or from people who will be affected by the decision. The third question that must be answered before the decision-making process begins is, when must a decision be reached? Answering this question often requires self-discipline and good judgment. Deciding to wait can be an excuse for putting off a tough decision. On the other hand, it might be advisable to wait if you expect conditions to change, or it might be crucial to act quickly or by a certain deadline. Finally, you should ask, what else is needed? What information is needed to make an informed decision? Or who can help in the decision-making process? Thinking through at the start what is needed to make an informed decision can save time in the long run. The first and most important step in the decision-making process is to define the desired outcome from the decision. The desired outcome is the primary goal or result that the decision must accomplish.
The control system on Unit 3 is starting to deteriorate noticeably. Now, we can cope with that until the scheduled shutdown, but we'll have to decide whether it's more cost-effective to overhaul it or replace it during the shutdown. And if we decide to replace it, then we'll have to decide what to replace it with.
The desired outcome in this example is to find the alternative that will be the most cost-effective. Carefully defining the desired outcome is important because alternatives are judged on whether or not they can achieve the desired outcome. Carefully defining the desired outcome also ensures that you are considering the right decision. While there may be a number of potential decisions that will achieve the desired outcome, there may be other conditions beyond the primary goal that must be met, or conditions that must be avoided in the course of making and implementing the decision. For example, there may be rules or procedures that must be followed in making and implementing the decision. These additional requirements or conditions are called boundary conditions. In general, boundary conditions define limits on the actions that can be taken in the course of making and implementing the decision. Let's look at a situation where a seemingly simple decision must be made.
Last night my brother called and asked me if I could go fishing with him this weekend. I'd need to leave early Thursday and take off on Friday.
Thursday and Friday. That could be a problem, Joe. Rick is on vacation, and we've got that big special order to get out.
Yeah, I know, but Andy said he could cover my shift.
The supervisor's primary job is to make sure that the operation continues to run smoothly, so that defines the desired outcome. But what other requirements or boundary conditions must this decision satisfy? One important condition is likely to be that it cannot endanger the health and safety of other workers. Another might be that production can't be adversely affected by giving Joe the time off. The decision must also be in compliance with written rules and guidelines for the organization. A fourth boundary condition could be that the decision should not cause resentment on the part of other workers, if, for example, Joe's absence causes them extra work. However, yet another condition might be to try to accommodate special requests from employees for the sake of maintaining good morale, as long as the other conditions are met. In many cases, a supervisor has some leeway in making decisions like this.
Well, Joe, it's a little tight, but if Andy can cover your shift, then you can go ahead with your plans.
Great.
This was not the only possible decision. For example, giving Joe the time off could be disruptive to the operation. In that situation, meeting the desired outcome would require that the request be denied. The boundary conditions for this kind of situation will vary from company to company. But as long as you know what those boundary conditions are, the decision can be made. Once the desired outcomes and boundary conditions have been defined, it is usually necessary to gather enough information so an informed decision can be made. Making an informed decision requires that the decision maker has enough information to properly evaluate the alternatives. So gathering information is an important step in the decision-making process. Let's look at a simple example that illustrates the process.
Hey, John, the pump on Unit 2 has developed a pretty bad leak around the packing.
Oh?
I talked with maintenance about it. They're all tied up today on the overhaul of the other system. They said to check with you to see if you want to pull somebody off to work on it today, or if it can wait till tomorrow.
Is the pump still maintaining enough flow?
Yeah, it's running okay, but it needs to be repacked.
Is there a safety hazard if we wait a day?
No, it should be okay.
If we pull somebody off that other job, that'll delay getting that system back online. If the pump is operating okay and there's no safety hazard, we'll wait until tomorrow to repack the pump. But I need you to keep an eye on it and let me know if anything changes.
Great, sure will.
Thanks.
Sure.
John determined that the pump was running adequately, and there was no safety hazard if the repair was delayed. He considered the alternative of pulling someone off another job to repack the pump, and considered the consequences of that alternative. After weighing all of those factors, John made the decision. The entire process took less than 1 minute. In this example of a simple low-consequence decision, only a limited amount of information was needed to make the decision. For more complex, high-consequence decisions, more information is usually needed. Factual information can be gathered by talking with people who are knowledgeable, by direct observation of an operation or process, and by consulting logs and other records that can provide the data that is relevant to the decision. The second type of information that is helpful in the decision-making process is people's opinions. Asking people's opinions is important to find out the different sides of an issue, and to give everyone who will be involved in implementing the decision an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process. Even opinions that are based primarily on emotional responses must be considered. In decisions where people are faced with change, it is important to have wide acceptance and support for the changes.
Hey, Cliff, how's it going?
Hey, yourself. going pretty good.
Good. Listen, we had a meeting the other day about the control system on this unit. Looks like we're finally going to be able to replace it during the next shutdown period. Now, one of the options is to replace it with a new computerized control system. What do you think about that?
Well, if I have anything to say about it, I don't think I'd be in favor of it.
Really? Why not?
Those things are really fussy, and they're tough to troubleshoot.
When asking for opinions, you should also ask for any facts that might support the opinion. This is important to determine whether the opinion is based on facts or emotions. Also, people's opinions will bring relevant facts to light.
Well, that's interesting. Do you have any specific information?
Well, I was talking to some of the guys from the plant up north. They put a computerized system in, and they're having a lot of problems with it. They had to take the whole system offline to find a problem with the flow controls.
Wow.
Turned out to be a software glitch.
Complex, broad-spectrum decisions are often made by teams or groups that are representative of the various departments involved in the decision. When a decision is being considered by a group, it is best to develop agreement about the decision among the group members. This is called building consensus. Building consensus seeks to select an alternative that is acceptable to everyone.
Now, the control system on Unit 3 is starting to deteriorate noticeably. Now, we can cope with it until the scheduled shutdown, but we know we're going to have to work on it during the shutdown, so we'll need to decide the best way to go. Now, we've identified 3 alternatives. First, overhaul the system. Second, replace the system with new equipment of the same type. Or third, replace the system with a new advanced design that'll be more efficient, but it'll cost more up front. So, we need to look at all the factors and come up with the most cost-effective approach.
The group considers all of the information that has been gathered, and that information is considered in light of the desired outcome, which is to identify the most cost-effective plan.
Doing an overhaul would bring the current system up to specs, which would bring about a 1%
Training requirements for the advanced system would be much more
For
extensive
the
than...
2 replacement systems, we can expect an overall savings of about 3% with the
overall
advanced.
costs of equipment and installation. We found that the cost of the new advanced system would be 15% higher than the same type.
Replacing the system with new equipment of the same type, we should see a 2%.
Talking with people around the plant, some would like to see us upgrade the system, but others are going to feel threatened.
Well, do you think additional training would help them feel less threatened?
Definitely, and some would benefit from basic computer training.
When trying to reach consensus, it's important that each member of the group shares his or her opinions about the options. One problem that can be encountered is something called groupthink. This occurs more in groups such as teams or departments where individuals discount their own ideas to conform to the will of the group or another individual. In this situation, decisions are made with a limited set of options, and more effective options may not be considered at all. So it's important that everyone has an opportunity to participate in the process, so that there will be a stronger commitment to the final decision. This airing of opinions also helps to clarify where agreement exists and where it's missing. With all of the information considered and all of the key personnel heard from, it's time to make the decision. Some decision-making situations can be quite complicated. Some will have many options, and in some cases, several people will have different opinions on which options are best. When a group of people gets stuck trying to sort out the options and make a decision, there are several tools that can be used to help build consensus. For example, the impact effort grid is a simple but structured way to order the options in a way that identifies the options that will give you the best results for the least effort. The impact of a decision is a measure of how well the decision will meet the desired outcome or goal for the decision. Effort can be measured in labor, time, money, or any other resource that must be expended to implement the decision. To use the impact effort grid, identify the options using brainstorming or another method and write each option down. It's a good idea to use flip charts or a large board so someone can write for everyone to see. Discuss the impact each option would have on meeting your goal, and write the impact ratings on the board. Impact ratings can be high, medium, or low, depending on how well each option would meet the goal.
Well, overhauling the system would improve performance and reliability, but in the long run, we'd probably have to overhaul it again within a short time. So even though it would cost less to do it, I would rate that option as low impact.
Anybody else have an opinion?
No, it sounds all right to me.
Okay, we'll give that a low. Okay, now how would we rate the option of replacing the system with a new version of what we have now?
I'd rate it high. The replacement system is much more reliable, and coupled with an increase in efficiency, it would give us an excellent return over the long haul.
I think the numbers support that. Are we all agreed?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, we'll give that a high.
I would also give the new advanced system a high impact rating. The new technology should give us much more reliability and efficiency.
Yeah, I think he's right.
Okay.
Now the group rates each option based on the amount of effort required and writes those ratings on the board. The ratings might be numerical. The higher the number, the greater the effort.
Based on the projected cost of materials, I'd say overhaul would rate the lowest on the effort scale. Let's give that a 1.
I definitely agree that the overhaul would be the easiest.
Replacement with a new version of the same system would have the same advantage. Of course, the cost of buying the hardware would be much higher. I would rate that option a 2.
We have overhaul as a 1, and we have direct replacement as a 2. What about the advanced technology system?
Well, the cost of hardware is quite a bit higher, and the installation time is longer.
Also, people would need to be trained on the new system.
It looks like the effort rating on the new technology is high. Let's say a 3.
Okay, anybody have a different view?
No, I think that's great.
Okay, we'll give it a 3 here.
When all the options are rated, they are plotted on a grid. The 3 levels of impact are listed down the left side, and the 3 levels of effort are shown along the bottom. Each option is entered in the square that corresponds to its ratings for impact and effort. When all the options are plotted, the option that will provide the highest impact for the least effort will appear on the grid closest to the upper left corner. In this example, option 2, replacing the system with a new version of the same type, gives high impact, but with only a medium level of effort. The other options either provide less impact or greater effort. In a situation where the data does not clearly point to one alternative, or the factors involve more opinions or emotional issues, the weighted voting technique is one way to determine how strongly each member of the group feels about the options. Weighted voting works like an allowance. Everyone has only a certain amount to spend, and it all must be spent. The first step is to assign a predetermined number of votes to each member of the group, based on the number of options being considered. Typically, the number of votes is twice the number of options. So if there are 3 options, each person would have 6 votes. In step 2, each member of the group decides how they would distribute their votes according to which options they favor and how strongly they favor them. If a person strongly favors one option, he or she can put all of the votes on that one option. If a person slightly favors one option, but also likes another, the votes can be distributed according to the relative strength of the opinion. The third and final step is to chart the voting on a grid. In this example, the names of the people voting are listed down the left side of the grid, and the options are listed across the top. Each person records his or her vote allowance on the grid. When all the votes are recorded and totaled, the team can see where agreement exists among the options. The option or options with the most votes is where there is the most agreement and support from the group. If necessary, this method can be done several times to narrow down the options. Once a decision is made, converting it into action involves a number of steps. First, those who must actually carry out the decision, or those who are affected by it, must be informed about the decision.
Hi, Andy. How you doing? Yeah, I was just talking with Joe, and he wants some extra time off on Thursday and Friday, and he said that you could cover him. So you're willing to work the extra time? Okay. Well, then you relieve Joe at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and you take the whole day on Friday. Okay? Okay, Andy, thanks. Bye.
In this simple example, John makes sure that those directly involved in the decision, Andy and Joe, are informed of the decision and know what to do.
Hey, Joe. I just talked to Andy, and he's all set to cover for you Thursday and Friday.
Hey, great. It's been a long time since I spent any time with my brother. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad we were able to work it out. But you owe Andy one.
Yeah, you're right about that.
In addition, it is best to publicize non-sensitive information widely, because it may be helpful for others in the organization who work with those who are directly concerned. John posted the revised schedule so that the others in the unit would know what was going on. This example only involved 2 people. If the decision involved replacing a major system, many more people would be involved, so the communication would be that much more complex. In addition, the actions required are more complex and must be accomplished by many people. Each specific action must be planned and scheduled. And each specific action must be assigned to a responsible person who is qualified for the task. Finally, there must be feedback along the way to track the progress of the work and to evaluate the results once the work is completed. In the example of replacing the control system, feedback could consist of information about costs, progress of the work, training, and other aspects of the installation. Once the system was installed and tested, there would be continuing evaluation of the improvements in reliability and productivity. All of this information would be used to determine if the results of the decision achieved the goal that was defined at the beginning.